A practical racial interest does not include worshiping billionaires. Give your head a shake.
So, wait, can we let Monsieur? Yeah, Monsieur, go ahead.
Kyle,
sorry.
I think that you're doing this thing that I often see with libertarians, where they're trying to search for logical consistency in politics, when often it's like a statement of identity, like this is our group, regardless of what Trump's policies may be. For the moment, he is one of the few voices of the common man, white male, genteel identity. And so I agree that some of these policies are throwing important bones. I don't think it will make peace at all, because I think that as the elite have committed themselves to waging war on this identity, which I feel is wrong, but ultimately it's not about the economic interests. I mean, if you blow up the United States and Western civilization, all the fiat money in the world doesn't mean shit, because it becomes paper again. But it's not about these rational economic interests. That's not what motivates men. That's not what stirs the passion in their hearts. It's identity and the transcendent and culture. And that, I think that's what Kevin and you are always butting heads about. Is I think Kevin is focused on, you know, this identity, which I agree it's important to this country. And I think that perhaps all the commodification of things, like especially like, well, I like to defend usury in the chat, but you know, people respond against that. People respond against a lot of these systemization of things and commoditization of things that they take as cultural standbys. And I think
when you acknowledge these criticisms, though, you have to acknowledge what it means for race relations, practically speaking. So if I'm supposedly
we'll make them an ant farm. We'll make
no, you don't understand. You don't understand. But there is a political war right now between the right and the left. And the left has the position of sort of what was it called? Liberation theology, race relations, where we embrace the lower IQ races and say, you are exactly like us, and all that stands between us is our privilege. And if you are anti-capitalist, then you essentially acknowledge all the points of this doctrine. You can't pick and choose what parts of science you decide to actually acknowledge. You can't pick and choose and say, oh, well, I believe in the IQ thing when it comes to whites and blacks, but when it comes to the elites and the and the lower class, it's like, well, who cares about IQ? Or what are you, autistic?
So,
do you care about
so
IQ?
what
It's just ridiculous.
More
It's
competent?
a measure of
It's
morality,
about a moral,
It's a measure.
Exactly. It's
It is a measure of morality.
No,
it
is not a measure of morality.
Yes, it's a measure of your criminality. Is it a measure of your criminality or not?
You would have us.
Is it a measure of your criminality or not? Stop dodging, Kevin.
Why don't you
dodging, Kevin. Is it a measure of your criminality or not?
Now you're sounding like you're 7 years old. Okay.
You're sounding like someone who's dodging a question again and again, and then using insults.
A question.
You dodge a question.
It is not a morality. It is not morality.
You dodge a question, then insult me reliably. Are you some sort of Markov bot? You just keep on repeating the same thing. You dodge the question, then you insult me.
No, now you're projecting because you've repeated certain phrases roughly 80 times.
Because you refuse to actually answer them. Does IQ correlate with criminality?
Does it correlate with criminality? Yeah, it correlates with criminality. That is not the same as conflating it with morality. What the hell is wrong with you?
Does criminality correlate with morality?
I answered your question. What the hell is wrong with you?
No, you didn't. Are you saying that criminality does not correlate with morality?
Is your CPU overheating, Kyle?
Stop dodging the question.
Do you have an extra go-to 10 line in your programming, Kyle?
Stop dodging the question. Stop insulting me and dodging the question. You're being ridiculous.
He answered the question, didn't he? How did he not answer the question, right?
What was it? Did he say, or did he not say, that there is no correlation between criminality and morality? Morality and criminality, not IQ and criminality, morality and criminality.
Well, KMG was saying that there is a correlation, but they are not the same. Someone, I guess, could be low IQ but very moral. And
no. I want an answer to direct questions. Autist. Does criminality have a connection to morality or not? Does it have a connection to it or not? criminality to morality?
It doesn't necessarily have.
It doesn't.
Because smart people will find ways.
That's so dumb. That's so dumb.
Wait.
Quiet for a minute.
With morality.
It does not mean the same thing because smart people use their intelligence to stay out of prison the way poor people can't because they're not smart enough. Next, you're going to have us cheer for Bernie Madoff. Why don't you make the case for him?
Yeah, Bernie Madoff is not like a mass murderer.
And then
Bernie Madoff is not like a mass murderer. It's not equivalent at all.
Did I call him a mass murderer?
The point is that's sort of the equivalency is that you have a lot more murderers on the lower end, and that represents far more harm to the social fabric, far more harm to people, far more of a representation of your lack of care for other people. Criminality represents lack of care for other people's concerns. Okay, that's the thing. And so when you deny the connection between criminality and morality, you're revealing yourself to be intellectually dishonest.
I am not denying a connection between criminality and IQ. You are conflating.
No. I said morality. I didn't say IQ.
Well, let him finish.
I said criminality and morality.
Please let him finish.
Sorry, repeat that.
I'm saying a connection between criminality and morality. There's no connection between IQ and morality. Okay, there isn't. Are you deaf or something? I said criminality and morality, not IQ and morality.
Criminality and morality? Yes, of course there is a connection.
Yeah, and then between criminality and IQ.
You're making a syllogism
have these two logical statements that come together. These two logical statements come together.
Smart people are more moral than less smart people, and that is idiotic.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Can I? I'm like 8 minutes behind on this conversation. I was catching up with the fireworks, but I gotta say, really, Kevin, have you named the nose yet? Because here's the thing: like, what I'm listening to is two people advocating for their self-interest and pretending like, the ideas and the rationalization for why they should be in charge, somehow actually matter. I mean, It's Kyle's up here defending the value of capitalists, pretending they're white, but really we all know they're fellow whites. And Kevin, it's like, this is I sort of kind of where you've been, where it's like, my impulse is towards economic freedom, and I would never want necessarily state control over many, many, many industries, but it's like, man, I'm looking for solutions to get my perspective back into power. And if I got to be a little Machiavellian about it and, abandon my principles, and so be it.
Well, see, this is what people like Kyle don't understand. That after 49 people are killed in a gay club in Orlando, Florida, the president of the United States holds up a rainbow flag.
Yeah.
Immediately, oh my God, he's a gay leader. No, it's just a gesture made in the heat of the moment. You really don't understand, Kyle. You refuse to make the distinction between formal language and its real meaning, and that is one of the reasons why conversation with you is virtually impossible.
What nonsense. You also ignore the other things that Trump has said about LGBT people. You dodge every single one of those things, of those things that imply his position. And so
has
you just
his government made a formal effort to redefine, or as the trans people say, to define them out of existence?
Just moving the goalposts. Just moving the goalpost. He is friendly. He has a history of being friendly to the LGBT community. It's not just one or two data points.
Has his presidency taken concrete steps that LGBT people are screaming about, calling genocide and the like? Well, then you just answered your
just about
question.
Anything. No, I haven't, because he's far more friendly than you are to these things. His position is much closer to mine than to yours.
Seriously,
that's what you deny.
You just go to the beep does not compute.
Come on, you're such. It's so amazing how dishonest you are in your arguments. You repeatedly insult and try to argue with ad hominems, and then you accuse me of being dishonest.
You have no empathy. You have no empathy. That is a serious lack.
Okay. I mean, look, I have plenty of empathy, especially for people who take responsibility for their own problems. I have empathy for people who take responsibility for their own problems and who have a practical perspective on how to dig themselves out of a hole that they're in. I don't have that much empathy for people who refuse to see the practicalities of their position. And again, it's like
your view is that, you know, these people, they have no one to blame for them but themselves, because they should have chosen richer parents, or should have arranged to be born with a higher IQ.
They should. Well, look, ultimately, virtues are largely inherited. Okay, that's the reality, and that's why social mobility goes down as you have a society that reflects the virtues of people. When people who are virtuous get more and more rich, as opposed to the old system, which had a lot of people who were virtuous and who were extremely poor and were marginalized, right? Especially in the old world, as you have a more liberalized system, you have an eventual slowing of social mobility. That's not just in the U.S., but everywhere that has a consistent position of sort of meritocracy. Meritocracy will gradually decrease social mobility as people find their natural level. And then people like you will say, oh, this is evidence of an elite keeping down the deserving people. Well, I'm afraid to say that the deserving people that you describe are precisely the constituency of the left. And you will find that your position
I don't care.
ends up dovetailing. Yeah, I know you don't care. You don't care about practicalities. You don't care about the interests. You don't care about the interests.
Your kill shots.
You don't care about the interests of the people
left.
who you purport to defend. You don't care about the interests of the people who you purport to defend.
If you had the capacity for such thought,
do you understand what the left
implies? You should be seriously worried about the popularity of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Okay?
Of course I am.
You should be seriously.
But you just.
Oh yeah. Okay. Sure.
Not
sure
at
they
all.
Do. Sure.
Yeah, they do.
Well,
Yeah, they do.
I think
if you acknowledge that capitalism is this sort of oppressive force which oppresses people who are subject to it, then you acknowledge all of the claims of the third world.
Okay, it is not a god to be worshipped, Kyle.
All of the claims of the third world, and you acknowledge the moral need for mass migration, whether you recognize that or not.
You are completely bent out of shape. Okay?
You are. Your brand of politics has no constituency whatsoever. While you accuse
my brand of are you kidding me? You're in the 3% there.
Anti-capitalism on the right does not have a constituency. It's a bunch of losers.
Have you heard of Tucker Carlson? Hey, Kyle, ever heard of Tucker Carlson?
How come everyone who has that? No, Tucker Carlson is not a NatSoc. Okay.
Have you ever heard of Tucker Carlson?
Has broadly Trumpist positions. Tucker Carlson has broadly Trumpist positions. Ultimately, he's not you in the closet, okay? People who have basically NatSoc positions are uniformly losers in their personal life, are uniformly going nowhere. That's how it works.
They are National Socialist, you creep.
NatSoc is not straw man. The issue is...
Are you calling me a National Socialist, you creep?
NatSoc is right-wing socialism. NatSoc is right-wing socialism. NatSoc is right-wing socialism.
Wait. Let's stop repeating ourselves. Maybe. Sorry, we can just wait. I wanted to get to Kyle. Kyle, you were talking about left-right paradigm, and you were kind of saying that the right, like you were saying, the right is this thing. Are you saying that you're the one to decide what the right is? Because I think that's what this is, the larger argument. We're going down all these different rabbit holes, but isn't the more overarching thing that you're saying that the right is capitalism, total free market capitalism, or something like that? Is that what you're basically saying?
Well, no, it's not entirely equivalent with capitalism, but there is a broad alignment of interests, and anti-capitalist right-wing sentiment is broadly extremely marginal, because by being anti-capitalist, you acknowledge the broad positions of the left. Unless you embrace a sort of ethno-nationalism, that's the only way that you get out of having a moral issue with the fact that you have this capitalist system which is oppressing all of these people around the world, right? If you want to get out of that position, you have to say that the moral world is a limited world by ethnicity. And this is a position that some people take, but it is a position that is extremely marginal and held essentially only by people whose personal lives are utterly fit.
Why is that the only other option?
Hold on, Kyle. What constituency is the white working class? Do you think they are like staunch capitalists, all that low tax rates for corporations because it's just
They-
growth. Do they also hold
therefore,
libertarian
deregulation-
social
Therefore,
values?
taking away regulations on coal. Therefore, taking away these sorts of punishing regulations on
That's such
industry.
a narrow conception. That is such a narrow conception.
That's what the
of
American
economic
right
interest.
turns into. That's what the American right turns into ultimately. I mean, and there's a broad support for deregulation. There's this notion that in America, basically the poor people view themselves as dispossessed millionaires, and that